you to solve unknown variables and also unknown angles when we have parallel lines that are cut by transversal. Now, I kept this diagram up here so that we have a visual and we can refer to it as we look at the angles. First, we are going to identify the relationship between the two angles. Then step 2, identify if the angle relationship creates congruent or supplementary angles, which means it equals to 180 degrees, And 3, we're going to set up an equation to find the unknown. So let's take a look at the example. Here is example 1. We have 8x minus 8 that represents this angle right here, and this angle over here is 6x plus 14. So let's figure out what angle relationship this is. So if I look at my angles, I can go down the list. I'm going to say, is this corresponding? And I'm going to look at my example. Here's corresponding. It should be like the same spot of the angle. So let's take a look. Okay, so this here is corresponding. So over here, I'm going to write number 1, corresponding angles. Okay, so we know that it's corresponding angles. And the second thing I know about corresponding angles is, I'm going to look right here, and it says corresponding angles are congruent. Okay, so we can say it is congruent. So we know that when we set up the equation, it's going to be equal. Number 3 is set up our equation. So now I know that corresponding angles are congruent. That means that this angle here is equal to this angle here. So I'm going to put equal sign there. And we're going to set up our equation. So we have 8x minus 8 equals 6x plus 14. And so when we solve for this, we're going to do the same thing we've always done to solve for this, where we're going to subtract both sides of the equation by 6x. And then we get 2x minus 8 equals 14. Solve by adding 8 to both sides, adding the constant, and we get 2x is equal to 22. And last step is to divide by 2. So that means x is equal to 11. So that means that this unknown x here is 11. So cool, we know x is 11, but what is that angle? What is that missing angle? So let's go ahead and do a check so that we can see what is those angles here. So we can solve for x, which that's what it's asking here, but let's take it a step further and figure out what is the actual angle that it's referring to. So I'm going to do 8x minus 8. So we'll plug that in. So 8 times 11 minus 8. That's going to give me 88 minus 8. So I got the angle is 80 degrees. So this angle over here is actually 80 degrees. Let's check the other one. 6x, plus 14. So it'd be 6 times 11 plus 14. Now, if we do this correctly, it should be equal to 80 degrees as well. So 66 plus 14 is 80 degrees. So this missing angle here is 80 degrees, and this one's 80 degrees. But the question only asks for what the unknown x is. So your answer is x is equal to 11. Let's take a look at another example. Let's go ahead and practice some more. So this is example 2. So the first thing we do is, number 1, identify the relationship. Number 2, determine if it's congruent or supplementary. And then 3, set up our equation. So looking at this, we see that these are angles that are interior and they are on the same side of the transversal. So let's take a look at that. So if it's inside and it's interior and is on the same side, we would call that same side interior. So the relationship is same side interior, and we know the same side interior is going to be supplementary, meaning it's going to be equal to 180 degrees. Okay, so write 180 degrees there. So that means that if it's same side, interior, that means that these two angles are not equal, they're not congruent, but if you add them together, it equals to 180 degrees. So that means if we add these together, it equals 180 degrees. So now that we know that the relationship, we know it's supplementary, we can set up our equation. So I'm going to take x plus 86, add x plus 104, and set that equal to 180 degrees, and we're going to solve for that. So combine like terms. Here are my like terms. These are my like terms as well. So I'm going to add that together. And so I get 2x's, so x and x gives you 2x, and it looks like I have 86 plus 104 is going to give me a positive 190. And I'm going to get 180 degrees. So now that I've added together, I can then subtract both sides by 190. And that means that 2x is going to be equal to negative 10. Divide, and we get x equals a negative 5. So x is equal to negative 5. So this x here is negative 5. So we know what the value of x is, negative 5, but let's figure out, well, what is the actual angle, right? So we know that if we add it together, it should be equal to 180. So let's check. So I'm going to take that first expression. I'm going to x plus 86, and I plug in negative 5. So I am going to get 81 for that missing angle. So 81 degrees. So this here is 81 degrees. Let's check the other expression. X plus 104. And if I plug in negative 5, I'm going to get 99 degrees. All right. So now remember, they are not going to be the same angle, but if you add them, it will be equal to 180. So let's check. If I add these together, 81 plus 99 equals 180 degrees. So yes, that is correct. So that means that this angle here is 81 degrees, while this one's 99 degrees. So when it asks for answer, we say x is equal to negative 5, and we say the angles are 81 and 99 degrees. Let's take a look at this example here. If I look at the angles, you can see just by looking at it, they're across from each other. They're intersected by two lines and they're across. So we know that it is vertical. So if it's a vertical, we know that vertical angles are congruent. So that means it's equal. So we have 10x plus 5 equals 11x minus 2 because they are equal. And we're going to go ahead and solve for that. We subtract 10x to both sides. And I get 5 equals 1x minus 2. Then add 2 to both sides of the equation. And we get x is equal to 7. So x is 7, but what are those angles? So we're going to do a quick check over here just to see what the actual degree of this angle is. So I'm going to do 10x plus 5. So I'm going to plug in 10 times 7 plus 5. And that's going to give me 75 degrees. So this here should be 75 degrees. Now we said that they should be equal, so let's check to make sure it is equal to 75 as well. So I have 11x minus 2, and I'm going to plug in my x, which is 7, and subtract 2. So that's 11 times 7 is 77, minus 2 is 75 degrees. So like we said, the angles are congruent. They should be exactly the same, but first you have to find out what the unknown x is. So our answer is x is 7, but the angles are 75 degrees. On the next part of it, I want you to try some examples there. Let's take a look at number 4. So our first step is to identify the relationship. Number 2, determine if it's equal or what we can say if it's congruent or is equal to 180 degrees. And then step 3, set up the equation. Then we find our unknown value x, and then figure out what the actual angles are supposed to be. So let's take a look. These angles look like they're interior of the two parallel lines, and they are on opposite sides. So we would call this alternate interior angles. So let's take a look. Alternate interior angles are equal. So here's an example there, that little like turquoise one. So we would say alternate interior angles and we know that alternate interior angles are equal, or we can say congruent. So when we set up the equation, we can set it equal to each other. So that means that these two angles, whatever it is, should be exactly the same. The same means equal. So now we can set up our equation. I'm going to do 7x plus 8, this angle here, and we're going to add this angle plus, oops, sorry, we're going to set it equal to it, negative 4 plus 9x. And then we're going to solve for that. So subtract x, 7x to both sides, and we get 8 equals negative 4 plus 2x. Then add 4 to both sides of the equation, where we get 12 is equal to 2x. And the last step is to divide by 2. So that means x is equal to 6. Cool, so we know x is 6. X is 6, but what are the actual angles? So let's go ahead and figure that out. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. 7x plus 8, and I'm going to plug in x for 6. And I'm going to simplify that. So I'm going to get 42 plus 8 is 50 degrees. So let's check this one. Negative 4 plus 9x. Plug in x, I get negative 4 plus 9, and we set the x is 6, and I get negative 4 plus 54, which also comes out to be 50 degrees. So good, so now we know x, this little x here is actually 6, and the angle, the actual angle itself should be 50 degrees. So if that's 50 degrees, then this is 50 degrees.